Mr. Chair, we're live.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and I'm joined on the panel today with Ms. Diane Knight and Mr. Robert Kraus. The assessment department personnel is Alyssa Adarkanova, and our administrative personnel is Ms. Fran Koto today. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you may leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 2 through 8 on our docket today. Ms. Picoto, will you please affirm the assessor's testimony and the first applicants at this time?
There is no one present for the first item on our docket, item 2.
Okay, we'll stand item 2 down then. We'll deal with that at the end. For items 3 and 4, I believe an applicant is present. If you could then please affirm the assessor, and then we'll deal with them in slightly out of order with number 3 first.
Okay, sounds good. Madam Assessor, please state your full name.
Alyssa Adarkanova.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Carson Horsburgh.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Adarkanova, would you please turn to number 3 on the docket today, the street address of 475 Ballantrue Drive? Thank you.
File number 24-937. Roll number 030930100095. Address is 475 Ballantrue Drive. Owner is Fortified Developments Incorporated. Roll year is 2025 with reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $2,737,000. This is Res 2 taxable. The zoning is RMU, and this is vacant residential high density land with an area of 170,565 square feet. Following to page 2. We can see that there's a subject sale, and it's affected with the land influence of no sewer, no water. It's located in the Chevrier neighborhood. And it has a net rate per square foot of $16.05. Follow me to page 3. I have the land sales comparable table. So comparable 1 is the subject property sale from January 7th, 2022. It's the most recent one, and it's sold at a rate of $29.30 per square foot. Comparable 2 is Toucan Oblique in the Prairie Point neighborhood. It is 156,881 square feet, and it has a zoning of RMFM. It's also affected by the negative influence no sewer, no water, and it sold in October 19th, 2021 at a rate per square foot of $17.34. Comparable 3 is 580 Belantre Drive in the Chevrier neighborhood, same as subject. It has a land area of 146,051 square feet, same zoning as subject, RMU. Also affected with the no sewer, no water, and as well retention pond adjacent. This one has a December 3rd, 2021 sale with a rate per square foot at $30.44. Comparable 4 is 741 Sterling Lion Parkway in the Tuxedo Industrial neighborhood. It has a land area of 140,925 square feet. This is same zoning as subject RMU. It's affected by heavy traffic, and it has a date of sale January 22, 2016 for $19.54 per square foot. Comparable 5 is in the same neighborhood as the subject. It has a land area of 117,953 square feet, same zoning as subject. This one also shares the common no sewer, no water that affects the subject as well, and it has a November 4th, 2021 sale at a rate of $27.88 per square foot. So I think the subject property being assessed at a rate of $16.05 is more than reasonable given the comparables and the subject properties sale in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Applicant. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions for the assessor.
Ms. Knight, questions?
Just if it's sold for $4 million, why is the value only $2.7 million?
I wouldn't know why the model assessment is at what it is. It looks like it should have been higher, but I don't know why
Okay,
it's only assessed at.
yeah, and your other two comparables, 156,000 square feet, 1734, and then 140,000 square feet at 1954. They're really very deep difference in comparables to the 2930 a square foot that they were sold for. Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Kraus, questions?
No questions, thank you.
I just have a question geographically with respect to this address on Ballantrae. I'm looking at your comparable 3 and your comparable 5 with street addresses of 580 Ballantrae and 640 Ballantrae. How far away from the subject property are comparables 3 and 5?
Comparable 5 would be within pretty close range, I'd assume, just because it's within the same neighborhood.
Right.
And I don't think at this point in time I have an answer for you as to where the proximity for comparable 4 and subject comparable 1 are.
Okay, is there something about Ballantrae Drive? Because I'm looking at the comparables again. Ballantrae Drive, the comparables are all, $27.88 to $30.44 per square foot, $29.30 per square foot on the sale in 2022. which are significantly higher. Is there something unusual about that neighborhood that commands, or that address, that road, that area of vacant land that commands a higher square footage rate? Or are
I
you?
would just say it's a very desirable location for multifamily development. And that's why we're seeing the higher rates.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Applicant, your evidence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property we're dealing with, 475, I believe it's Ballantrae. No one really knows. I don't know how they come up with these names for the new neighborhoods. Really, anyway, Ballantrae, who knows? Anyway, if the board will follow me along to page 3 of the disclosure. So MNP has valued the land parcel. We've determined that the value is $2,262,000. The purchase price paid, well, they overpaid, and if the city felt it was worth what they paid, it would be assessed at 4.9 million. Instead, it's assessed at about 2.7 million. So the city, they themselves know that the property, they purchased it for too much. The city's not disputing that it's worth 4.9. No one's saying it's worth 4.9. Sometimes you overpay for something. I was at the Jets game not too long ago. I certainly overpaid for a Budweiser. I know that beer wasn't worth $10, but I paid $10 for it. These things happen. On page 4 of the disclosure, we have the assessment of the property, 3.9 acres, no water, no sewer, unserviced land. M&P has looked at some similar sales. We've determined that an appropriate land rate is $580,000 per acre. On page 6, we have the assessment map and aerial photograph of the property. On page 7, we have some additional photographs, again, an aerial photograph and street view photograph. On page 8 of the disclosure, we do have some sales of land parcels of similar size. I have adjusted those sale prices to reflect the change in market conditions from the purchase date to the current date. And that's where we're looking at median land rate of $580,000 per acre. That's how we've arrived at our estimate of fair market value for the subject property being $2,262,000. On pages 9, 10, and 11, provided some aerial photographs of the comparable sales. And with that, I would welcome any questions from the assessor or from the board members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Zadar-Hanova, any questions?
Yeah, so just going to your page with your comparables, page 8. Are you familiar with the zoning for the 2935 Spears?
My understanding is that the zoning does differ from the subject property. I looked at land parcels that were similar size to the subject.
Okay, so you wouldn't know that it has zoning of M2?
I'm aware of the zoning difference.
Okay, and are you aware that 1450 Waverly and 1420 Waverly also have a zoning of M2?
Again, yes, I'm aware. I chose those properties because they're located in Fort Garry, just as the subject property is.
Do you think that the zoning would affect what a developer would be able to do with the parcel?
Certainly, the whole Ballantrae area was previously zoned for manufacturing. It's the beet sugar lands, and these properties have that same potential. So the city is prioritizing the development of multifamily buildings.
Okay, and I'm noticing that I guess for your sales on Spears and Waverly that you have sale years, or I guess all of them in 2014, 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct. I have adjusted them to reflect their current market value.
Okay, so just let me know if this sounds correct. I've taken the, I guess, the time adjusted sale price in acres and converted it to square feet. So let's say, for example, the 2935 Spears, which is a multi-roll sale. The time adjusted is $10.38 per square foot. And then the sale price in 2016 is $9.11 per square foot. Do you think that seems accurate of the way land sales are going in the market?
I'm not really following.
Just that it seems that 2016 is 8 years ago. So the sale price per square foot, let's say for 2935 Spears, right? It's sold at $9.11 per square foot. Does it seem right to you that the time adjusted is at $10.38 per square foot? That there was only within 8 years basically a dollar difference?
I haven't used the price per square foot metric.
Okay, but that doesn't sound right to you or anything, or you wouldn't know?
I'm not sure. Did you submit rebuttal evidence? Like with
No, this is just
breakdown of
questioning.
these numbers? I mean, I don't imagine the board can really follow along either. I haven't included any price per square foot. I've looked at it on a price per acre basis.
Well, I think mathematically, if I can interject here, mathematically, the question is whether it's $1 square foot, 1/9, or approximately a 10% increase over an 8-year period. Is that something that is realistic in a market around Spears? Is that a fair restatement of your question?
That is, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I mean, certainly different parts of Winnipeg have seen different increases in terms of land values. The valuation of land is always quite tricky, but that 10% figure, that would fall within the range of increases, yes.
Okay, and I guess similar type of question for 1450 Waverly and 1420 Waverly, that the time adjusted, I'm going to speak in the square footage. Anyways, so 2014 sale for 1450 Waverly at $10.65 per square foot, and then the time adjusted sale at $12.99 per square foot. Does that seem the way that the market is typically going for vacant land? For this one, I guess a 10-year period difference?
Again, it falls within the range that land values have appreciated, yes.
Okay. And then I guess my question for the 1420 Waverly would be along the same lines, that the 2016 sale, again, 8 years ago at $11.79 per square foot, is now time adjusted to $13.68 per square foot. That seems to be reflective of market, you would think?
Again, land sales of this size are few and far between. Looking at the market, it falls within the range that land values have appreciated.
No further questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight? Ms. Knight, questions?
Yeah, no questions, thank you.
I just have a question with respect to the time adjusted price per acre or per square foot, just the time adjusted difference. they're not all identical mathematically. What rates, or did you use a table for this, or how did you determine the rate of increase?
So I looked at market reports over the past number of years, and I did my best to see how land had appreciated and for different sizes, different areas, and it was based on that. So it's tricky with limited sales of land parcels that large. So it was the best I could do with the data I had available to me in terms of isolating what that change would look like.
Thank you. I don't have anything further. Madam Assessor, any summary?
Yeah, sure. To summarize, I would say that the subject sale supports itself. It falls in line with the other comparables. It looks like the assessment at $16.05. I don't know why the model would do this, but it does not seem to be, it seems to be too low. And the subject sales support the negative influence that the comparable sales support the negative influence that the subject property has, and they are all zoned within the like RMF, RMU, RMFM. So they kind of have the same development potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horsburgh, any summary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief summary. Both myself and the assessor, neither of us are trying to defend the sale price. Property they overpaid for. We both have sales comparables within a certain range on a per acre basis between 755,000, some sales at 600,000 an acre. There's market evidence in support of a higher value, market evidence in support of a lower value. Land's very tricky. The assessment that we've determined, the market value the MNP has determined, falls within a range that is reasonable, and there's support for that value from my comparables and from the assessment department's comparables. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We will conclude this matter and move on to number 4 on the docket. That is the street address of 31 Riel Avenue. Ms. Idarhanova, can you please turn to your brief and provide your evidence with respect to that property?
File number 24-895. Roll number is 08004828000. Address is 31 Riel Avenue. Owner is Trademark Group of Companies, Inc. Roll year is 2025 with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $1,700,000. Classification Res 2, liability taxable. This is vacant residential high density. The zoning is RMU, and the land area is 61,089 square feet. Follow me to page 2. There is a subject sale, and the land influences affecting the subject are bus route, commercial adjacent, external corner, light traffic. It's in the Minnetonka neighborhood, and it's assessed at a rate of $27.83 per square foot. Follow me to page 3. We can see the comparable table chart, and for comparable 1, 595 Belantre Drive in the Chevrier neighborhood, we can see that the land area is 71,416 square feet, and it has RMU zoning. It's affected by no sewer, no water. It's a January 12th, 2021 sale at a sale price per square foot of $28.13 per square foot. Comparable to 585 Belantry Drive in the Chevrolet neighborhood. Has a land area per square foot at 71,410 square feet. The zoning is RMU, land influence of no sewer, no water, and it's an April 9th, 2021 sale. And the sale price per square foot is $29.28 per square foot. Comparable 3 is 1,777 St. Mary's Road in the River Park South neighborhood. It has a land area of 56,581 square feet. The zoning is RMFM. And it has a sale date of August 10th, 2016, and a sale price per square foot at $18.73 per square foot. Comparable 4 is 0 Morningstar Lane in the Sage Creek neighborhood. It has a land area of 55,635 square feet. It's zoned RMFS, and it has a sale date of November 1st, 2019 at a sale price per square foot of $22.72. Comparable 5 is 0 Gray Heron Drive in the Sage Creek neighborhood. Has a land area of 53,995 square feet. The zoning is RMFS, and the date of sale is January 18th, 2021. The sale price per square foot is $27.24. And I'd just like to point out that comparable 1, 2, and yeah, comparable 1 and 2, they're affected by a negative influence, and our subject is not affected by that. So I believe that our subject property being assessed at $27.83 per square foot is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horsburgh, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I have, however, submitted rebuttal for this property, so I have issues, but I'll address it there.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
Yeah, so you say that comparable 1 and 2 have negative influences. That's the no sewer, no water, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, and that would drive down their price?
In a sense, yes. So the fact that the subject property is able to, I guess it just kind of balances out in the fact that the Chevrolet location is more desirable than that of the subject in Minnetonka. So it's an equalizer, and it's just that there are also comparable 1, 2, and comparable 5. They're the most recent sales, 2021.
And
So it's mainly to say that in terms of like any location adjustment, that the negative influence is already kind of reflecting that. And so it kind of balances out to be comparable with the subject.
would you say comparable 3, 4, and 5 are equally desirable areas as the subject?
I would think so, yes.
And just, I'm unclear with the difference in zoning from RMU versus RMFM or RMFS. How would that affect pricing?
They're all multifamily residential, so they're going to be developed at a higher density, and basically what would be the difference between RMU, RMFM is that on RMU properties, you'd be able to develop at a higher density, and RFMFM, which is less desirable than the subject, as well with the RMFS, you would be able to develop less units than you would on an RMU property.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, and I don't have any questions. Mr. Horsberg, for procedure, what we'll do is we'll hear your presentation. There'll be the questions on it, and then we'll distribute the rebuttal evidence that you've submitted. I haven't seen it as yet. We'll confirm, of course, that Ms. Picoto has the rebuttal evidence.
Yep, it has been distributed just now, so you should have it within the next few seconds, minutes.
Okay, then what we'll do is we'll hear your presentation, your evidence, and then we'll take maybe a couple of minutes just as a recess to review the rebuttal evidence, and then come back and hear your presentation with respect to the rebuttal. Okay.
That sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Horsberg, your evidence, please.
Thank you. So the property we're discussing today, 31 Riel Avenue, with an assessed value of $1,700,000. If the board will follow me to page 3 of my disclosure, the subject property is a 1.4 acre parcel of vacant land in St. Vital. M&P has valued the property, and we have determined that the market value has been overstated by the assessment department, and we have determined that that value is $1,080,000. On page 4 of the disclosure, we have the assessment, publicly available information from the Assessment and Taxation website. I do apologize. Actually, I had the wrong value stated on page 3. I thought that number didn't sound familiar to me. I do retract that. On page 5. We're actually requesting $1,436,000. So I apologize for that. And that's based on a land rate of $1,026,000 per acre. Moving on to page 6 of the disclosure, we have the assessment map, as well as the satellite map showing the property's location. On page 7, we have some photos of the property aerial and street view. On page 8, we have a number of comparable sales. The subject property has been assessed at a rate of $1,214,286 per acre. Looking at similar land sales throughout Winnipeg and similar neighborhoods, we can see that that land rate of 1.2 million is not supported. The property is most similar to 1639 St. Mary's Avenue, similar size, and that property, we have adjusted the sale price to reflect the change in market conditions between the sale date and the reference date of assessment. And we are basing our valuation of the subject property primarily on that sale. That's how we've gotten to the requested land rate of $1,026,000. This property is quite close in terms of location, quite close to the subject property, and it's the best representation we have for a property like the subject. Pages 9, 10, 11, and 12 have aerial photographs of the comparable properties. And with that, I would conclude my presentation, again requesting that the property have its assessed value revised to $1,436,000. Thank you very much. With that, I would welcome any questions.
Thank you. And as I indicated, we'll take a break after we've asked our questions and review the rebuttal evidence submitted. Okay. So Ms. Darhonova, have you any questions?
Yeah, sure, just a few. So your 690 Naren sale, that's post-reference?
Yes, I'm relying primarily on 1639 as being the best indication of the value.
Okay. And I guess, are you familiar with the zoning of your comparables on page 8?
I am familiar.
Okay. Would you agree that none of these zonings would be that for the multi-family district?
1639 currently has a multifamily building on it.
But in terms of the sale that you're using, it had a zoning of C2. Would you agree that a zoning of C2 is not comparable to the zoning such as RMU, RMFL, RMFM, RMFS, and R2?
The city has made it clear that their position is to incentivize the development of more multifamily buildings. The property was purchased with C2 zoning and was rezoned, which happens quite often. So I don't place a lot of weight on the zoning, given the climate that we're in.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, have you any questions?
No, I do not.
My question relates to the time adjusted price. Again, you didn't use, sorry, am I correct in my assessment that you didn't use a straight line or, I'll start again. What kind of method did you use to determine the time adjusted price per acre, the increase in price per acre that over the sales price?
So I looked at market reports from the different years, as well as I tried my best to find land sales and see how they had appreciated in value. With the land sizes, sales can be few and far between. So it's a mix of looking at market reports, as well as sales throughout the years and deriving what I felt to be a fair rate for how those properties would have appreciated in value between the sale date and reference period.
Now you have, thank you. You've indicated that the comparable on which you're placing a great deal of reliance is 1639 St. Mary's in St. Vital. And you've got some pictures here as well. So there was a building, a structure, a church, it looks like, on that parcel of property. That was at the time of sale?
So the subject property, there was a church and a house which were torn down. And I can't recall off the top of my head if those were demolished prior to the purchase date or if they were demolished by my client. I can't recall off the top of my head. I believe they were demolished because originally those were two.
Sorry, I've gotten frozen here.
Yeah, on our end too. Should I take a recess, Mr. Chair?
Yes, unless he's going to come back very quickly.
Hello?
Oh,
Mr. Horsberg, okay, he's back now.
Sorry,
You were frozen, but I'm not sure how far along you were just discussing that you weren't sure if the property, if the structures on the property were demolished by your client or prior to the sale.
Yeah, that I don't recall off the top of my head if he was the one who demolished them or if they were demolished prior to his purchasing the land.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. And perhaps I'll get everyone, before we take a short recess, to confirm that we do have the, we've got the rebuttal evidence. Did you add it, Ms. Pacoda, did you add it to the OneDrive, or how did you?
Yes,
I've got it. Yeah.
it should be there under item 4.
Okay, I'm going to close out everything. Perhaps if we can take just 2 or 3 minutes and recess. And I'm going to have to refresh my OneDrive, I think, because it's not going up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. I have the rebuttal evidence in front of me. Mr. Horsburgh, could you please present your rebuttal evidence?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are a number of items that I wish to rebut. The assessor has provided evidence of the sale price. The property was purchased in 2018. And then I also want to rebut the assessor's comparable sales evidence as well. But I will start with the 2018 purchase price. So if the board will follow me onto page 4 of the rebuttal. So that property was purchased in 2018 for $1,650,000. The property was purchased with RMU zoning, which allowed for 1 dwelling unit for every 500 square feet of lot area. At the time of the purchase, the density allowance was 122 dwelling units, and that was per the zoning bylaw. In 2019, the owner of the property sought to develop the site and applied for a variance. The variance went to a hearing, and the board, the city property planning and development, they restricted the development potential for the site. The public service recommended that the allowable density ratio be changed from 500 square feet for every dwelling unit to 740 square feet for every dwelling unit. So I have an excerpt from that hearing, where the variance hearing, where after purchasing the property, the development potential, the density allowance was severely restricted. On page 5 of the rebuttal, I have included a zoning excerpt. I believe someone had asked earlier in today's hearing how the different zoning, how it affects development potential. So this table sheds a bit of light on that. With the RMU zoning, you are allowed one dwelling unit for every 500 square feet of lot area, and then the multifamily zoning, small, medium, and large, 1250 square feet, 800 square feet, 400 square feet. So when the property was purchased, the zoning allowed for one dwelling unit for every 500 square feet. With the passing of the variance, that density was restricted. So when the property was purchased, the owner was under the impression that he would have been able to develop the property with over 100 dwelling units. That didn't end up happening. On a per dwelling unit basis, and this is the way a lot of developers look at vacant land purchases. They look at it and they're willing to pay X for every dwelling unit that they're going to be able to build on that lot. So the owner looked at it, and the purchase price was $13,500 for each dwelling unit. With the variance restricting the development potential, the purchase price paid for 82 dwelling units would have only been about $1.1 million. So I valued the property. When I had originally valued the property, I came to this $1,080,000 figure. I took a second look at the property not too long ago, and I felt that 1.4 million is probably a little bit closer to a fair market value for the property. So while I do reference 1,080,000, all things considered, 1.436 is probably the fair market value for the property. The second point that I want to rebut here is for the comparable sales. So if the board will follow me onto page 6 of the disclosure, the assessor has relied on the sales of 595 Ballantrae and 585 Ballantrae in defending the assessed value. So if we look at this table I've included on page 6, the allowable density for these two properties, it's a green site. It's a new site. It's also a site that the city has designated as a major redevelopment site. It's also been designated as a transit-oriented development site, which allows for high density development. So those two purchase prices, they're going to be able to develop those sites with 143 dwelling units. That's why they paid what they did. The subject property, while similar in size, restricted to 82 dwelling units. So there's a huge difference on that basis, and that's why these two comparables, well, for one, they're about 17% larger, but they're going to be able to develop those sites to such a different potential than the subject property that I don't feel that they're at all relevant in terms of justifying the assessed value for the subject property. Second point of issue with the assessor's comparables, comparable 4 and 5, if the board will follow me to page 7 of the disclosure, the roll numbers for these properties don't exist. The addresses for these properties don't exist. As you can see on page 8, The roll numbers do not exist. I was not able to analyze these sales. So either the address is just quite simply 0 Morningstar, 0 Gray Heron. These addresses don't exist, and the roll numbers don't exist. So I don't dispute that these properties do exist and they did sell. However, there was no way for myself or anyone, any member of the public, any taxpayer, to analyze these sales because there's simply no information available on them. So with that all being said, those are the points that I want to rebut. And I thank the board for their time and consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Edarhonova. Do you have any questions?
More so a comment, if I may, about why a roll number would potentially cease to exist. So just to make it clear to everyone, at the time of the sale, comparable 4 and 5 did sell on their sale dates with those roll numbers. But as the RMFS and with the parcel, so with the RMFS zonings and the parcel sizes, they were developed since November 1st, 2019 and January 18th, 2021. So it's kind of, so what happened was there's new roll numbers to reflect the development that has occurred from those sites. So I think I don't want anyone to get, I guess, confused with the fact that they did exist. These are real sales and those are real roll numbers. And that since the date of sale, they've been developed. And so the cookie's been broken into smaller pieces. And that's why the applicant was not able to verify, and perhaps he didn't have a broad enough sales history record to look through. So I hope that is clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to note for the purposes of the record that the comment made was in the nature of almost rebuttal evidence. So it's used as an explanation. That's fine. But Ms. Knight, have you any questions with respect to the rebuttal evidence?
No, but I have a further question just to confirm something.
Please, let's get to this as clear as possible.
Okay, so in your original presentation on page, when it's 1.2, you said that you had put 1.903, but then you're asking 1080, then you came up with 1,436,000, and this presentation again has on section 3, it says the property has been reassessed April 1st, 2023 is 1080. What are you actually asking for again? The 1,436,000?
Yeah, so 1,436,000. So I valued the property twice. I probably should have just valued it once, but land is so tricky. So when I had originally valued it, and I should have updated the presentation, I originally valued it at 1,080,000. I took a second look at the property. I was able to find some more sales. I hadn't found the sale of which one was it? The St. Mary's, the 1639 St. Mary's. Once I found that sale, I realized, okay, here's a really good comparable. That's a stone's throw away, similar size. It's been developed with the multifamily building. This is my best piece of market evidence in terms of what is this property worth. So I ended up feeling that the 1.436 million is a fair value for the subject property, and I apologize for those inconsistencies.
Okay, so where did you get the assessment amount of 1.903 is incorrect? Where did the 903 come from?
Oh, sorry, that's just a typo on my part.
Okay, that's better. Okay, good.
sorry about that.
Because I was like, what, I'm missing something because I don't know where the 1903 came from. Okay.
No, I apologize. That was a typo on my part.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. That clarifies some things for me as well. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I think my questions have been answered now as well. Any summary required, Madam Assessor?
No, thanks.
Okay. And any summary required, Mr. Horsburgh?
No, not really. I just want to thank the board for their time and consideration today, and thank the assessor as well. Yeah, I appreciate the consideration that they'll be giving these properties.
Thank you very much. We will conclude that matter. You will receive the notification by registered mail in short order. Thank you, Mr. Horsburgh. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Adar Canova, and the panel members as well. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can move on to number 5 on the list at 36 Roslyn Road, unless anyone needs a short break.
May I just request a brief recess just so I could get set up here?
Perfect. Why don't we take 5 minutes or so, come back just shortly after 2 o'clock, and then we can begin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we are live.
Thank you very much. We'll call this meeting back to order and move to number 5 on the list. That's the street address of 36 Roslyn Road. Ms. Adar Hanova, would you please lead us through this?
Mr. Chair, I just need to affirm the applicant.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the correction. Yes, please affirm the applicant.
Ms. Applicant, please state your full name.
Farah Cates?
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to number 5 on the list. Ms. Adar Hanova, would you please lead us through your brief?
So file number is 24-1853. Roll number is 12032484000. Address is 36 Roslyn Road. The owner is 6571574 Manitoba Limited. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. An assessed value of 924,000, classification Res 2, liability taxable. This is vacant residential high density land with an area of 8,864 square feet and an RMFM zoning. Subject sale history on page 2. I believe the 2021 sale involves a building that's been demolished, so that was not a land sale. And we have the River Osborne neighborhood and an land influence of external corner. The net rate per square foot that we're assessing it as is $104.24. Page 3 is my comparables. So comparable 1 is in the McMillan neighborhood, and it has a land area of 7,584 square feet and a zoning of RMFL. It has a sale date of October 2nd, 2018, and a sale price per square foot at $93.62. Comparable 2 is within the River Osborne neighborhood, same as subject. And it has a land area of 9,935 square feet. RMFM zoning, same as subject. And a sale date of January 17th, 2022, with a sale price per square foot at $80.32 per square foot. Comparable 3 is within the same neighborhood as the subject as well. It has a land area of 6,666 square feet, has a zoning of RMFL, and the sale date is June 18th, 2019, with a sale price per square foot at $80.26. Comparable 4 is within the 522 River Avenue in the McMillan neighborhood. And it has a land area of 9,923 square feet, an RMFM zoning. And this one has a sale date of January 3rd, 2013, and a sale price per square foot at $75.58. Comparable 5 is 0 Maryland Street. It's in the West Broadway neighborhood. It has the same zoning as the subject RMFM. And the sale date is January 6th, 2023, most recent sale, with a sale price per square foot at $74.84. And on page 4, I have an image of the subject at the top, followed by the comparables. And this continues to page 5 as well. And for what looks like our subject property is on the corner of Roslyn and Bryce. And the comparables within, except for 5, are on River Avenue. So I think that the model has priced these ones higher than the comparable sales. And I do think that the net rate per square foot of $104.24 is reasonable because unlike the comparables, the subject is tucked into a more quieter nook instead of being directly on river. So that is why I think that the model assessment is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, questions?
Yes, thank you. So if we go to your comparables on page 3, you're saying that the current assessment is reasonable, but would you agree all of your comparables would support a lower value just based on the numbers that are here on a per square foot basis?
Well, the ones with comparable 2 and 3 that are within the River Osborne neighborhood, which is, in my opinion, more desirable than the other neighborhoods, they're not time adjusted.
But the city would not typically be using time adjustments for land evidence, is that correct?
No, they're not time adjusted. That's what I'm saying. So that when you look at a sale that's happened in 2019 and 2022, there would be a change in market between our reference date of April 1st, 2024.
But you've not
I
provided.
don't think it's
evidence of that.
unreasonable for the net rate to be at $104.24 per square foot.
But just to be clear, you've not provided, you're speaking to hypothetical time adjustments. You haven't actually submitted anything pertaining.
No, these have not been time adjusted, but they show, in a sense, I guess, a dated sale and the way that the market's moving. And as land becomes more scarce, and especially in prime locations, typically we would see the market rates increase from 2019 and January 2022. It's an assumption, if that's what you're wondering.
Okay. So looking at your comps, 530 River and 290 River are both zoned RMFL, whereas the subject is RMFM, is that correct?
That's correct.
And since RMFL allows for a greater density, would that be seen as more desirable from developers?
It would be seen as more desirable to be able to develop at a higher density unit, but I don't think that is a turn away that the subjects RMFM zoned, because people are still developing and there's still a market for RMFM.
Mm-hmm. So in looking at Zero Maryland comp 5, are you aware that it was purchased by the same owner who owns the apartment that's directly adjacent to it?
I'm not aware of that, no.
And so assuming that, and per street view, it has stall numbers that look like parking. So based on that information, in your opinion, would that purchaser not be motivated to purchase that land and potentially pay more?
That's not in my brief. If it's in yours, we can review it then.
Well, you have the sale in your brief, so I'm asking you if you've invested.
I'm not familiar with the, I guess, the adjacent that's supposedly owned by the same owner. That's not in my brief.
Okay. That would conclude my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, questions?
Going to comparable 1 and comparable 2, because they're not time adjusted, you had said we could extrapolate the value goes up, but what I'm seeing, comparable 1 was sold in 2018 at a price of $93.62 per square foot. The price actually went down with comparable 2, and they're in the same area. It's at 80.32 per square foot 4 years later. Am I misreading that, or is there something that?
No, these are factual sales, so it's just a transaction in history. Unfortunately, there aren't too many sales in the subject property neighborhood and surrounding areas to base a good conclusion or to make an assumption that the value of land is decreasing. But yes, that is correct, that in the McMillan neighborhood, the October 2nd, 2018 sale sold at $93.62 per square foot, and comparable to in the subject property neighborhood sold in January 17th, 2022 at $80.32 per square foot.
Are those comparable neighborhoods, or is it better to look at comp 2 versus comp 3 instead of comp 1 versus comp 2?
Well, comparable to is within the same neighborhood as the subject, as well as comparable 3. And then comparable 1 and 4, they are located in the neighboring neighborhood. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Any questions?
No, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Ms. Cates, your evidence, please.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have a summary of some of the pertinent facts about the property, as well as our requested assessment of $620,000. So if you go to page 6, we have an aerial view of the subject. And then on page 7, we have a Google map view of the area, along with just another overhead view of the site. Property description on page 8. So the subject property is located on Roslyn, at the southwest corner of its intersection with Bryce in River Osborne. The sale in September 2021 for $1,250,000. At the time of the purchase, it contained a turn of the century mansion. It was a heritage property that was converted into an office space, and the purchase was with the intent to get a commercial income stream out of that and use that as an office space. Following the purchase, the owner undertook a thorough review of the integrity of the property, and it was determined that it had to be demolished, which is a pretty rare occurrence given its heritage status. So I would suggest that this sale should not be used at all in terms of the determination of value, because it was not purchased with the intent of pure land value. And currently, there's no development plans in place for the subject property. So if you turn to page 12, we have the overview of our direct comparison approach. So the subject is currently assessed at $104.24 per square foot, based on the comparables that I've provided here, as well as what the assessor has provided. It does demonstrate that the current assessment would be too high. So I have here comparables from both the same neighborhood as well as comparable neighborhoods, both in terms of proximity as well as the overall character of those neighborhoods. So with land sales, sometimes there isn't a ton of data to use in the exact same neighborhood of the exact same size with the same potential for development. So when we're doing an analysis, it is reasonable to go to other areas if they would be comparable. So for example, if someone would be considering River Osborne, they'd probably also be considering McMillan, St. Boniface, etc. So our comparables here indicate a value range of $39.79 at the low end to $80.32 per square foot at the high end. We have an average, excuse me, we have an average of $59.25 per square foot and a median of $56.44 per square foot. So if you go through page 13, for each of the comps, I've put in aerial map, as well as a bit of a description in terms of its proximity to the subject and other pertinent facts. So I have those for each of the sales. So page 13, 584 Gertrude, Page 14, 513 St. John Baptiste. Page 15, 909 Grosvenor. Page 16, 530 Stradbrook. Page 17, 320 River. This is a comparable that both myself and the assessor have utilized. And so to summarize on page 18, after reviewing all of these sales, a value of $70 per square foot makes sense for the subject. It is on the higher end of the range. And keeping in mind that the sales used are more recent sales, the oldest being 2020, I believe. So I believe these are a more accurate representation of the subject property. So based on that, I would request that the assessment be reduced to $620,000. And then I have a short appendix starting on page 19. And I've just included the listing of the sale so that you could see pictures of the property at the time. So it shows that it wasn't intended to be demolished at the time of sale. And then I've also included on page 23 and 24 some of the zoning requirements, as some of the comparables are R2 and other types of multifamily zoning. So I've just included those so you could see the differences there. And that would conclude my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cates. Ms. Aydaranova, have you any questions?
Yeah, just a few. So on your page 12, would you say that aside from the River Osborne neighborhood, that your other comparables are in a more or less desirable neighborhood than that of River Osborne?
I would agree they're in different neighborhoods, but I wouldn't agree that they're different in their desirability. McMillan is adjacent, I believe, to River Osborne, and St. Boniface, Crescentwood, both very desirable neighborhoods, similar to River Osborne.
Okay, and aside from the RMFM zoning on your comparable table, the other ones are R2. Would you agree that the R2 zoning for multifamily being at a development of 800 square foot per unit is different from what we would see in the RMFM zoning? In terms of desirability, would the R2 be a deterrent?
Well, I'm looking at the zoning tables and I see R2 800, and then RMFM, I see that's also listed as 800.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
I do not.
Mr. Kraus?
What is the difference between R2 and RMF? Yeah, like the size, I mean, it's 800, but R2 means you can only have 2 residential units on it, or how does that work?
I don't believe it means you could only have 2. RMFM would be part of the high density multifamily, and then I believe R2 would could accommodate some smaller, like maybe like a 6-plex or something, but I'm not as well versed on the distinctions between those zoning. I saw that they allowed a similar identical density, so I felt they were appropriate, but maybe the assessor could speak more to the differences with those categories.
But your thoughts are it's lower, like less units? Potentially.
I would think typically the intent of the zoning, in terms of just kind of overview of reading the zoning guidelines, the intent would be that RMF would be for higher densities and R2 would probably be for smaller. But when we look at the site we're dealing with, it is quite small. So if it does have identical density allowances with R2 parcels and we're dealing with similar size, then I believe it cancels out in terms of the differences in what you can do.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, I'm looking at your page 18, your reconciliation of value. The reconciliation of value, you indicate the most weight has been placed on comparable 5 at 320 River Avenue. That's right?
Yes.
Okay, the 320 River Avenue is certainly got a higher traffic count than Roslyn Road would, right?
Yeah, that would be fair to say.
Okay, if that is your comparable on which you've placed the most weight, can you explain how you've arrived at a rate per square foot $10 less than a block or two over in a quieter area?
Yes, for sure. So there is a bit of subjectivity in terms of reconciling the value. Placing the most weight on this comp by going to the higher end of the range, but I'm not completely ignoring my other comps that I found. I believe that they are also strong comparables, but noting that this one is 750 meters away, I think it makes sense to choose. But I would also note that based on some research that I did on 320 River, following the sale, an application was submitted to get a higher density to RMFL. That would like double the density of the parcel, 400 square feet from 800. So while it's unclear if they would have necessarily definitely known about that, it is a possibility. So I think that $80 should form the absolute high end of the range, and the subject should probably fall somewhere beneath that. But whether the subject assessment $70 a square foot or $80 a square foot, I think it does show that the current $104 a square foot is too high.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything further. Any summary, Madam Assessor?
No, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Cates?
I'm good as well. Thank you.
Then we will conclude that matter and move on to number 6 on the docket. That's street address 145A River. Ms. Adar Hanova. Sorry, I'm having some difficulty. Would you please lead us through your evidence?
Yes, so file number 24-2880. Roll number is 120322842000. Address is 145A River Avenue. The owner is the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation. The roll year is 2025 with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $1,140,000. Classification is Res 2 liability grant. The property is vacant residential high density with an RMFM zoning, and the land area is 23,752 square feet. Going to page 2. This one is also in the River Osborne neighborhood, and land influences are bus route, an external corner, and medium traffic. It has a net rate per square foot of $48. And going to page 3 is the comparable sales table. So for comparable 1, we have 290 Frontier Trail in the Waverly West B neighborhood. This has a land area of 36,330 square feet, a zoning of RMU, and a land influence being external corner. It has a sale date of December 16th, 2022, and a sale price per square foot at $39.37. Comparable 2 is 207 Birchwood neighborhood, 0 Portage Avenue is the address. And land area is 43,200 square feet. The zoning is RMFL. Land influences affecting this one would be Assiniboine adjacent, bus route, heavy traffic. It has a date of sale being April 6th, 2022, and a sale price per square foot of $48.61. Comparable 3 is 173 Notre Dame Street in the North St. Boniface neighborhood. It has a land area of 31,587 square feet. It has same zoning as the subject being RMFM, affected by a bus route, commercial adjacent, light traffic external corner. The date of sale here is March 7th, 2018, and The sale price per square foot is $44.16. Comparable 4 is 1133 Portage Avenue in the Minto neighborhood. It has a land area of 38,861 square feet, RMFL zoning, and it's affected by a bus route, heavy traffic, external corner, and it has a January 23rd, 2017 sale, with the sale price per square foot being $37.31. Comparable 5 is within the River Osborne neighborhood, same as subject. It has a land area of 18,742 square feet. It is zoned RMFM, same as subject. It's affected by a bus route, medium traffic, external corner. And the sale date here is more dated, being November 25th, 2014. And it has a sale price per square foot at $48.02. And then page 4 would show an aerial image of the subject property cornering River Avenue and Harkness Avenue, and then the comparables continuing onto page 5. That's the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, questions?
Yes, thank you. Would you agree that the locations of comparable 1 and 2 on your page 3, that the locations are not similar to the subject in terms of being in close proximity or general character of the area?
I would say that the subject is in a superior location than that of comparable 1 and 2. And I chose them for their zoning and size, and that they're 2022 sales.
Okay. And then your comp 5 on River, it's pretty old. Would you agree that the assessment department doesn't typically consider 10-year-old evidence, whether that's sales or leases?
I would not agree
Assets,
with
I
that.
guess.
I think that it's valid to use a sale that is similar to the subject. And I think here the dated sale being at a rate of $48 highlights the desirability of the River Osborne location.
Okay, that would conclude my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
And I don't have any questions. Ms. Cates, your presentation, please.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have our requested assessment of $950,000. On page 6, we have an overview of the site. And then on page 7, a Google Map view and an external view. On page 8, we have our property description. So the subject property is on River at the northeast corner of its intersection with Harkness. It is approximately 23,000 square feet. It is on a bus route and noted to experience medium traffic. The history of the subject property, it formerly contained several 3-story structures which operated as social housing. The improvements were demolished and there's no current development plans in place for the subject property. So if you turn to page 12, we have the overview of the direct comparison approach. So in terms of the sales, there aren't any recent sales in the subject neighborhood that would be reflective of the same size and similar uses. So again, we go to similar areas in terms of being similar in desirability and overall character. So I have comps from Tuxedo, Lord Roberts, and North St. Boniface. So the land sales indicate a range of $20.42 a square foot to $38.40 a square foot, with an average of $27.83 and a median of $26.24. So these comparables that I've chosen, they are bigger, but they represent larger parcels of land within mature communities that are similar to the subject neighborhood. So I feel that they're more accurate than using either smaller parcels for this type of site or going to vastly different neighborhoods. So in terms of the more specifics of each sale, on page 13, we have a bit more detail on the sale at 490 Shaftesbury Boulevard. I would note that this property was purchased with the intent of rezoning to accommodate multifamily, and it was subsequently rezoned. So while it had a different zoning at the time of sale, I believe the intent to be important in terms of what a developer believed they could do with the property. Page 14, we have 20 Walker Court. This comparable is zoned RMU. It does allow for a greater density than the subject's zoning, so that would be 500 square feet per unit versus 800. So I believe that would make it more desirable, because if you could add more density to a site, developers would be prone to pay more for that. Page 15, comparable 3 on Berwick Court. Similar, again, zoned RMU, allows for greater density. So both of these properties, 20 Walker Court and Berwick, usually considered to be part of South Osborne. And then page 16, comparable 4, this included 2 properties that are adjacent, just separated by this street, La Vérendrye. And again, the property, it is designated, it's in an area that's designated for higher density residential, so I felt that it was appropriate to include in terms of the analysis. So to summarize, on page 17, we have a reconciliation of value. So comparable 1 at 490 Shaftesbury and comparable 2 at 20 Walker would be the closest match in terms of land square footage, and they've been given greater weight in the analysis. So we're using $40 per square foot times 23,752 square feet for a value of $950,000. And in the appendix, I've just included the zoning tables for reference. And also page 21, the North St. Boniface secondary plan. So this is in relation to the comparable in St. Boniface that I've used, which shows that it is in a residential high density area, which makes it appropriate to use in the analysis. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darhonova. Do you have any questions?
Okay, so going to your page 12, do you think that for your first comparable with the zoning of parks and recreation, do you think that that kind of zoning would limit or would not be representative of the normal pool that high density zoning would have for prospective buyers?
Yes, and I wouldn't have used, if it was just PR1 and I had no further information, I wouldn't have used it in the analysis. But given that there was intent to rezone to accommodate multifamily, and then it subsequently happened, that also speaks to the intent. So I think a big thing with land analysis is what can you do with the land? So even if the zoning was different, if there was an intent to rezone and a belief that it could be, and it actually was achieved, I think it's appropriate to use.
Okay. And looking at comparables 2 and 3, 4. So it seems that all of these would double the size of our current subject, being at 23,752 square feet, correct? More than double the size.
Yes, they are larger land sales, definitely.
Do you think that the principle of economies of scales would apply here?
So based on our research in our office about how economies of scale plays into residential land, we're not finding that economies of scale is playing as much of a role rather than what you can do with the land. So I do agree they are larger, and that's why I'd probably place greater weight on the smaller of the two. But there's limited sales within mature communities of larger sizes. So I felt that even if it's 60,000 square feet, it's a better comparison than maybe 7,000 or 8,000 square feet. But yes, I do agree they're larger, but I don't necessarily agree about economies of scale for these.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, I do not.
Mr. Kraus?
I have no questions, thank you.
I have a question with respect to the overheads, or the aerial views of your comparable 2 on Walker Court and comparable 3 on Berwick Court. Immediately to the left is are those railroad tracks?
Yes.
That would certainly be a negative influence, would it not?
Yeah, I would consider railway to be a negative influence, which is why our requested assessment is higher than the values that those would be indicating, which I believe acknowledges the negative influence there.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I had the picture in my mind's eye of what the location was. I don't have anything further. Any summary required, Madam Assessor?
No, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Cates?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Then we will conclude that matter and move on to item number 7 on the list at street address 124A Mayfair. Ms. Adarkanova, can you please provide?
File number is 24-2829. Roll number is 12032312200. Address is 124A Mayfair Avenue. Owner is the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation. The roll year is 2025. The reference date is April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $2,003,000. Classification of Res 2, liability is grant. The zoning here is RMFM, and this is vacant residential high density. The land area being 41,743 square feet. Going to page 2, we can see that the subject is in the River Osborne neighborhood, and that it has land influences of a bus route, bus stop, an internal corner, and affected by medium traffic. And the net rate per square foot on this one is $47.98. Continuing to page 3, I've used the same comparables as previously, so I would just like that to carry over, please. And I guess to highlight would be the fact that most of these comparables are, aside from comparable 5, very similar to the subject's 41,743 square feet. They all have the high density zoning development. And although the subject is RMFM, which we can see in comparables 3 and 5, I don't think that the zoning of RMU or RMFLs would not be comparable, as they differ in size, and just in general, high density development and land zoned as such is very desirable nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Kraus, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, questions?
No, sir.
And I don't have any questions. Ms. Cates, your evidence, please.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have our requested assessment of $1,461,000. On page 6, we have the property aerial map. And then the Google map view and just some exterior photos. Property description is on page 9. So the subject property is on the south side of Mayfair, east of Harkness. It is about 41,743 square feet. The subject property previously consisted of several townhouse buildings, which operated as social housing, and those have since been demolished around 2016, and there's currently no development plans. If you turn to page 13, we have our direct comparison approach. So it would be the same sales, 490 Shaftesbury, 20 Walker, Berwick Court, and St. Joseph / La Vérendrye. So I'll just skip ahead to page 18, where we reconcile the value. I would request a value of $35 a square foot for the property, which would give a value of $1,461,000. And I do think this one is a bit closer in terms of matching the comparables in terms of the as compared to the prior property. So I think $35 a square foot makes sense. And that would conclude my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Idarhanova, could you please, or do you have any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Knight,
No, sir.
Mr. Kraus?
No questions.
I do have a couple of questions with respect to the geographic location of this property. You've been looking at the overhead and the pictures as well. Is this immediately adjacent to 145A River, the previous property?
Immediately adjacent.
I see Harkness Avenue there, and I see Mayfair Avenue on the, I'm looking at your page 6 with the overhead.
I'm just going to open up the other one just so I can see it.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree that they're adjacent.
Okay. Just a difference in size between 23,750 feet and 41,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's close to double the size of the parcel.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Any summary required, Madam Assessor?
No, thanks.
Ms. Cates?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll conclude that matter and move on to the last matter for you, Ms. Cates, that being 109 Mayfair Avenue. And Ms. Idarhanova, would you please present your evidence with respect to this address?
File number is 24-2601. Roll number is 1203234160. The address is 109 Mayfair Avenue and the owner is WRE Development Limited. Roll year is 2025 with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $1,630,000. This is classification other property, liability taxable. And it has a vacant residential high density as property type. And this is 33,596 square feet zoned RMFL. On page 2, we can see that there is land influences of Assiniboine adjacent, bus route, medium traffic, and school. And it's within the River Osborne neighborhood. And the net rate per square foot is $48.52. I've utilized the same comparable comparables as I have in the previous two files on page 3. So I would ask that that would get carried forward. And I would like to point out that comparable 2 in the Birchwood neighborhood is also affected by the Assiniboine adjacent land influence. That would conclude my actually, sorry, I have images on pages 4 and 5, but it's all the same as we've seen in the previous 2 ones. Anyways, thank you. That would conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Cates?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Kraus, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
And I don't have any questions. Ms. Cates, your evidence, please.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2, we have our requested assessment of $1,001,000. On page 6, we have our property site map, and then a Google map view and a photograph on page 7. We have our property description on page 8. So the subject property is on the north side of Mayfair, to the west of its intersection with Queen Elizabeth Way. It is about 33,000 square feet. The subject property is on a bus route and is noted to have medium traffic. It is adjacent to the Assiniboine River, which results in a portion of the land estimated approximately 5,000 square feet being unusable for the development purposes. So when we're looking at river adjacent with single family lots, it becomes clear that river adjacent properties would have more value. When we're looking at a multifamily development, the river impairs how much of the land they can use, and there's additional costs with stabilizing the riverbank. And additionally, when you look at apartments that are on the river, do tenants pay more for that view? They really don't in any measurable way. So I would suggest that it's not really adding value in the same way that it would for perhaps other property types. And the current plans for the subject, it is currently under development. There is a 15-story structure that is being built. And so I've included on page 9 just some close-ups of, you could kind of see the line there where they can't use that. And then this is just below that is a current photo of the development coming in. So if you turn to page 13, we have the same land comparables. So I'll just skip ahead to the reconciliation of value on page 18. So using $35 a square foot times a lesser land area to account for the fact that all that land is not actually usable. That's how I get to $1,001,000. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Adarhanova, do you have any questions?
Would any of your comparables on page 13 be indicative of a river influence?
No, my comps are not on the river.
So do you have, I guess, any evidence that would support in terms of sales that a river influence be a deterrent?
Well, the evidence is that it's a lesser usable. They can't use 33,000 square feet of the lot. You could see where it cuts off. So I'm not suggesting that the rate per square foot be lower. I think the comps support $35 a square foot, but I'm suggesting that the portion of the land that it's applied to should be a lesser portion to account for the fact that you can't use this whole parcel.
Okay. And I guess still using comparables with square footages that seem to be much greater than the subject. Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, questions?
So just to this land that you can't use, if you built a property and left front land empty from the street to the parking lot, that would be land you're not using as well, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So if you built a property on a street and you moved the property back further, and your building came in further back and you had a parking lot and then vacant land and then the street, would that vacant land have a value?
Well, in terms of developments, yeah, there are setback requirements in terms of where they have to build. So that does happen. But I'm just suggesting that if all of this land is not usable, then I do think there should be a deduction. I think this is a different scenario than standard setbacks with development.
So in that setback land, is that land valued or not valued?
It would probably, it would be valued, but we'd have to look at it to property by property, because we would apply like a deduction sometimes for different reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how do you know how many feet of this are not able to be used?
I measured
that-
it.
Okay, I see there's a wall going up, looks like a wall going up at the back. So you're saying from the wall out to the water is not able to be used on page 9?
Well, what I'm suggesting is not able to be used in terms of the top photo on page 9, where this line goes to where the blue parcel line cuts off. I wouldn't measure all the way out to the water because that's not part of the parcel, but from this faint line from the red arrow to the top blue line.
Okay, so when you
measured.
look at the picture below that, you
Mhm.
see the building going up and then there's a parked car to the right and then a piece of a wall being built. Is that where you're saying from that wall to the water is not able to be used? Or further back yet?
I'm not looking all the way out to the water, just at where the parcel line cuts off.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
I have a question again, just following up on Ms. Knight's questions with respect to the 5,000 square feet. First of all, the picture at the top of page 9 predates the picture at the bottom of page 9. Is that correct?
So the picture at the top is from the aerial map, and then the picture on the bottom is from the pictometry feature of the aerial map. So so it's from kind of a different place, but yes, this picture would be older because it doesn't have the development on it, whereas the bottom picture is more recent because it shows the development.
Right. And the top picture that's older it appears to show an element of riverbank stabilization or erosion prevention in place. Is that what that white rock area is?
Yes, the current owner undertook the expense of stabilizing the riverbank in order to be able to develop the property.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Madam Assessor, any summary?
No summary.
Ms. Cates?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Then we will conclude this matter. Ms. Cates, I believe that is your last matter. Thank you for your presentation today, and you will be receiving the notification of our decisions by registered mail in short order.
Thank you.
I believe there is one matter left on the list, that being the matter we stood down, number 2 on the list, 157 Scott Street. Ms. Picotto, have we received any communication from the applicant on this, or has there been any request for an attendance?
No, we have not.
Then perhaps what we'll do is take a short recess to discuss how best to proceed at this, and we can go in camera, please.
Mr. Chair, we are live.
Thank you. We'll call this meeting back to order. Oh, can you readmit Ms. Adarhanova, please?
Oh, my apologies. I'll place this back in recess.
Okay.
Okay, we are live again.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order, please. We have discussed the matter. We are going to hear the evidence that has been filed with respect to this. So Ms. Adarhanova, would you please introduce the property at 157 Scott Street and provide the evidence in your brief, please?
So file number is 24-169. The roll number is 12021198100. The address is 157 Scott Street. The owner is Carla Homes Inc. The roll year is 2025 with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $335,000. The classification is residential 2. The liability is taxable. This is vacant residential high density land with an area of 3,690 square feet, and it's zone C1. Going to page 2, there's listed subject sale history. And it's in the River Osborne neighborhood. Land influences that affect the subject would be commercial, adjacent, and internal corner. Our rate per square foot for the subject is assessed at $90.79. And then going to page 3, we have the comparable sales table. So I have comparable 1 being 227 Stradbrook Avenue within the same neighborhood as the subject, River Osborne. It is larger than the subject at 7,365 square feet. It has C2 zoning and it has a sale date of February 17, 2017. The sale price per square foot being $86.90 per square foot. And then comparable 2 and 3 are paired sales. So 0 Keewatin Street. And the land area here is 2,506 square feet. It has the same zoning as subject, C1. It's affected by bus route and heavy traffic. The sales date, I guess they differ by, they're in the same year, so they differ by a few months, or yeah. And the sale price per square foot for the most recent sale of September 3rd, 2021 is $89.78 per square feet. Comparable 4 is 588 Desmiron Street. It is 4,994 square feet, same zoning as the subject, C1. A sale date of June 15th, 2017. And the sale price per square foot is $67.08. This one is in the Central St. Boniface neighborhood. Comparable 5 is within Wellington Crescent. This one has a land area of 3,762 square feet. Zone C1. It has a sale date of July 3rd, 2020, and a sale price per square foot at $81.61 per square feet. Going to page 4, we can see that this subject being at the corner top in the C1 zoned for that image, that is the subject. You can't really see the red on red. And C1 is designed to accommodate small compact commercial uses within or surrounded by residential areas that are attractive and compatible in scale and character with surrounding residential uses to serve the convenience needs of the surrounding neighborhood. Page 5 shows comparable 1 and then 2 and 3. Page 6 shows comparable 4 and comparable 5. And then page 7 is our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And page 9 is Addenda A. And this here would highlight that we have it as residential 2. And it seems that residential 2 is for, I'm going to read residential 2 4B on page 14. So undeveloped, unimproved, vacant, or abandoned land that is lawfully usable primarily for a residential purpose and on which there may lawfully be constructed a building containing 5 or more dwelling units. Going to page 17, it seems that the subject would best be, I guess, classified as other property, as the C1 zoning is not typically something that would permit the development of 5 or more units. And then on page 23, I have Addenda B with some zoning information for the C1. That would conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
Mr. Kraus, questions?
No questions, thank you.
I would just like some clarification, please. You indicated, I think, that this was zoned R2?
It is.
Sorry, the classification rather is R2.
Classification is R2, yeah.
Okay. And the discussion, or at least the subject property noted, why is it noted as C1 on the photograph or the overhead?
That is the zoning.
The
And
zone.
we can see that, I
Zoning
guess, on
C1. Okay.
page 2 as well, and page 1, the zoning C1 commercial.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's clear to me now. Any need of a summary?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, that concludes this matter. Thank you very much for your presentations today, and we will deliberate, and you will, of course, be notified of the decisions. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
And Ms. Picoto, perhaps we can take, what time is it now? We can come back at 3:15?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Diane and Rob?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay. Stretch my legs.